What's the creepiest thing you've heard someone at your job say? Story 1. More unsettling than creepy, TBH. I was checking the voicemail at the dialysis clinic when I opened one morning because sometimes our patients will leave us a message the night before if they know they're going to be late or miss treatment. Sweet elderly patient had left a message that said, "I'm sorry ladies, I won't make it tomorrow morning. I'm going to see Hazel." Hazel was his wife who passed away 4 years earlier. I immediately called house. No answer. Called his son that was listed as an emergency contact, and he tells me he was just about to call us to let us know his father passed away in the night. His dad had gotten all of his paperwork with his will out of his safe, watered the houseplants, put money for each of his utility payments in labeled envelopes, put on his best suit, shined his dress shoes, left a message for us at the clinic, left a message for his choir director letting him know he wouldn't need a ride to practice in 2 days. Then he sat down in his recliner and died, as far as I know, and according to his family, he didn't do or take anything to expedite his exit. He just went to sleep in that recliner. Story 2. Directed towards me, one of our guys on his smoke break said, "You don't look like you run fast." In the moment, I laughed, but as soon as I stepped inside our building, I had the biggest WTF moment of the year. He was a lean dude, teeth missing the rest orange and brown, with clothes on that a dude with a machete would be wearing in a horror movie. I hadn't even been there 2 weeks. He was a cool guy for the rest of the interactions I've had with him. Never chased me. He just had weird sense of humor. Story 3. I got your number out of the Rolodex. I'm gonna text you later. Asked manager at my first fast food job when I was 14. Hey, I remember you said your favorite ice cream was half-baked? I'm in your driveway with 2 spoons. I pulled your address and phone number from the system. Older guy I worked with at the IRS. Want to know why I only hire tiny girls under 21? They're easier to convince to get in my truck. Franchise owner at a Little Caesars. Look in the cup with my name on it in the souvenir section. There's a present for you. Middle-aged manager at a surf shop on the beach when I was 16. It was a thong, perfume, and a pack of condoms. Story 4. I'm a teacher that works at the school that I went to. I've ran into a few creeps at other schools and reported who I've needed to. Students, please talk to trusted adults and we can and will get things done. But the creepiest one I've heard came from the creep's own mouth and was from a teacher that started when I was a junior. I was talking to him in the hallway. He was a liked teacher when I went there and was still there when I came back. I brought up the valedictorian from my class. Him, yeah, she was nice. None of you knew I was even with her back then. Me, what? Him. Oh yeah, she was a cutie patootie, much hotter than the senior girls today. I reported that shit faster than a gunslinger. Would you believe that one of the senior girls immediately came forward? Fucker probably doesn't like prison. Good. And I can't hear cutie patootie without feeling nauseous anymore. Story 5. I had a customer come in and ask what the youngest age was for someone to work there. My boss said that the minimum age requirement was 16. The guy then asked whether or not it mattered if they looked mature enough or that they could pass for 16. My boss said no. He mentioned his granddaughter was 12, but could pass for being older. He smirked after, as if to receive approval and agreement from us about his granddaughter. My coworkers and I all exchanged faces of disgust and horror after he left. Story 6. Can I say nothing? Had a customer come up and proceed to pay for an ice cream. He never said a thing, and then I looked up and there was a gun in my face. He just nodded to the other cash register and quietly ran out once he got the money. I had PTSD for a while after that. Anyone who acted off and didn't say anything triggered the shakes in me. Story 7. Working a slow shift at a restaurant, so the other servers and I were watching some celeb news show. They had a segment about Sandra Bullock and how she worked at an ice cream shop as a teen, and that she was robbed at gunpoint by someone who was never caught. Another server, who was the golden boy, was marveling and said, "Damn, what if you were the guy who got to say he robbed Sandra Bullock at gunpoint?" Everyone just looked at him in shock, to which he responded, "I'll bet he regrets that he didn't make her take off her clothes." Story 8. My first job when I was in high school. Worked as a clerk for a dry cleaners, and it was some 80-year-old woman that had a horrible attitude every time she came in. This day she said she liked my facial hair. Had that been all, I'd have been fine with it. But the tone in which she said it, and the look in her eye, as well as the smile she gave me when she did this, made my skin crawl. I went home and shaved it off after work. Story 9. I was an auto tech at a dealership, and I was in the service advisor booth talking to one of the writers. A car pulled in, and the woman happened to be yawning. Suddenly I heard, "That's right. Open your mouth wide. I've got something to fill it." I looked at the writer and said, "Do you realize that is my wife? I've never seen a 6'2" guy shrink so fast in my life. All he did the rest of the day was apologize every time I saw him. Story 10. I worked at a small retail store with someone I knew for many years through school. They were a part of my friend group and we hung out all the time, went bowling, to dinner, to parties at friends' houses. This person was always very kind, a bit shy, and hilarious when you got to know them. One day after work, while we were both waiting for our rides as the sun was going down and it was getting dark, they started explaining to me how they believed in aliens. They said that they know they sound crazy, but they know aliens are real. I asked them what made them believe so fiercely. I knew they did psychedelics and such, but wanted to know why they were so adamant. They explained that they had weekly meetings in the forest with the aliens. The aliens would shine a light down on them and bring them up to test them and do drugs with them. They would be up with the aliens all night and then come back to Earth and pretend it never happened. Even stranger, they claimed their mom also would join them up there, and the aliens didn't speak their language, but they implanted them both with a neurological chip so they could communicate. They also mentioned that the aliens were kind creatures, but they would take over when the time was right. This wasn't the creepiest part to me. The creepiest part to me was the darkness in their eyes when they started explaining, as if they were transported there and were explaining it from memory, like it was real. This person 100% believed what they were stating. I played along as I was feeling a bit scared. I was only 19 at the time, telling them anything was possible, and it sounded like a very interesting experience that they had. After I said that, the light returned to their eyes and they said, "I really appreciate you listening to me. No one usually does with this kind of stuff." Around a month later, they were arrested for attacking their partner and their partner's mother with a hammer and almost killing them in their apartment because voices told them they had to. Turns out, my longtime friend had paranoid schizophrenia and was completely undiagnosed and untreated. Due to the slow mental health system here, it wasn't caught or treated before the incident occurred. But police did see that there was some sort of mental break happening and got them help. It was so out of character for them to be violent. At first, I didn't believe it. I still have trouble wrapping my mind around it now in my 30s. I still feel bad that I didn't tell anyone at the time. I just thought they were high or fried from the drugs. I always thought they were a bit odd but harmless. I always wonder if I could have stopped the incident from happening or helped my friend before it went that far. I also wonder if I could have been that victim if I'd tried to help. I saw them again about a year later and they were a shell of themselves, clearly heavily medicated. I think about them often. Story 11. When I was 22, I was working in a bar and had tables to take care of too. Guy, before he left, grabbed my arm after many drinks, gave me $100 tip, said, "I would love to drink your bath water and would be honored if I choked on it." Worked at a culinary school a few years later, and a co-worker in a different part of the school said, "Your eyes are so beautiful, I want to rip them out and store them in a mason jar on my desk to look at when I'm feeling down." Those were probably the oddest, creepiest ones from work. Lots of stories about men approaching me with creepy things outside of work too. Story 12. I interviewed this younger woman, likely fresh out of high school, for a job at Spencer's. Asked her to share a leadership experience of hers. She described being one of many counselors at a Christian summer camp. And one night, they went into the campers' bunks, masked with guns, and brought them out one by one, saying things like, "This is what happens when you don't believe in God." She smiled through the whole thing, and I had to do everything I could to hide my absolute horror. She did not get the job. I really hope she found her way out of whatever cult she'd been a part of, FR. Story 13. Driving up to the UP of Michigan through Wisconsin with a new guy at work. First time ever working with him. It was a pretty quiet ride most of the way. Nothing to look at besides trees and farmland. He randomly says, "This would be a great place to hide a body." Not sure if he even realized he said it out loud. I didn't say a word, just kept driving. Story 14. A guy who was an old vet started talking about how two cars were drag racing near him late one night on the freeway and watched as both lost control and crashed into a nearby pole, causing them both to catch on fire. He then started laughing uncontrollably as he mentioned he just drove by and watched. Myself and everyone else listening to this just had a look of concern. Story 15. My 4-year-old and I were sitting in his sandbox playing happily when he asked, "Mommy, why is that man hiding behind the tree watching us?" I ask him where and am craning my neck both sides trying to see the trees behind me. He says, "That tree right by you." At this point, I am standing and looking around. I point to the closest tree. "This one?" "Yeah, there was a man standing behind it." I make my way to the tree and walk all the way around it. I also looked down the alley to see if he left that way. Never saw a man. A few months after, we were walking to the park and he said we had to step off the sidewalk for that girl walking towards us. There was nobody coming toward us. Got all kinds of Sixth Sense vibes, but he never did it after the girl. Oh, sorry, this wasn't at my job. Still pretty creepy though. Plus, momming is a job. LOL. Story 16. Definitely not the creepiest thing here, but definitely enough to give pause. Sleep meds are kicking in, so not as flowery as I could tell it. I work in a library at a reference desk. We get a lot of older folks, or people who, for whatever reason, don't have the ability to look up anything on the internet on their own. I answered a call from a man who wanted me to try and look up a specific woman. The only result with the info he gave was a missing person. He says, "Oh, how about," and gives me another woman's name and a little more info. She is also a missing person. I apologize, I can't get him more info than what I've found, and he just laughs and asks if he can have my number instead. Big no from me on that one. Story 17. Okay, I was with a sweet gentleman who was passing, and he just wanted to be home. He came home and lived near a hospital. He was seeing and naming people he saw who had died in the hospital. His partner couldn't believe it. He kept seeing a baby with me, needless to say, without details. There was a baby I was with at one point which passed. I went home and cried my eyes out. Story 18. Work in an office. Few people in the team were at lunch. Conversation started normal and lead into people talking about their kids. I don't have kids. One guy took it upon himself to turn the conversation into outwardly calculating when the women had all conceived each of their children by working backwards from their kids' birthdays. Not the most insane thing ever, but uncomfortable, especially in a workplace. Story 19. I joined the Navy when I was 16 and sailed for a few years. I'm still on the reserves, but I work as an electrician full-time. I was at work and one of the guys started asking me about the Navy and what sailing was like. As I was telling him some funny sailing stories, another coworker, let's call him Jeff, walked up and joined the conversation. Now Jeff is an odd guy. Everything about him is just extremely awkward, and he gives creepy vibes. I have always made a point of saying hi to Jeff because befriending the weird guy is usually a good survival strategy. Anyways, as I'm finishing my story, Jeff excitedly asks me how long I've been in the forces. Then he asks me what kind of guns I know how to shoot. I told him I'm a cook, so I only know how to shoot the Sig Sauer and the C7. He got disappointed and then asked if I was issued my own firearms. I told him you only got issued one if you were active duty, so I did not currently have one. He then told me that he had tried to join the army as a sniper but was denied for mental health reasons. I shrugged and said that it is understandable that they would have detailed screenings on who joined the military, and I am sure it was nothing personal. He just shook his head and said that it was bullcrap that he wasn't allowed to go kill people for his country. Then he went on a rant about how killing humans is no different than hunting animals. He described in great detail what kind of animals he has hunted and the sounds each animal makes after being shot, which would have been messed up enough, but Jeff was filping smiling the whole time. He then showed me a bunch of pictures of his gun collection and delighted in recalling a story about the time his dad had gotten to shoot a home invader. I asked to be transferred to a new job site after that. Story 20. I used to work the night shift at a college technology center. Generally, my late nights were just keeping the one lab open, in case students wanted to work late night. Buildings closed at 2 a.m., and my office was beside the lab in the basement. One night, every single desktop computer in the lab and office shut down all at once. We weren't scheduled to push any system updates, so I was worried something else was going on when they all restarted, and all mirrored each other to bring up WordPad, and text-to-speech started all chanting "Go home, angsty" over and over. I immediately knew it was one of the admins fucking with me, but it scared the hell out of me, as it had been hours of dim basement lighting and silence when he did it. Story 21. If it comes from me, does it still count? Story time. Third shift at a film library back in the day when all checks were photographed on rolls of microfilm. It's 5 a.m., end of my shift, and there's a new girl and she's confused about how to refile her film. She's in my way. I decide to perform an experiment. Giving no outward signs, I begin screaming at her, top of my lungs, in my mind. I am mentally, psychically radiating hate and frustration and end-of-shift exasperation as much as I can muster without outward signs. I'm calm outside, not moving, not sighing, not twitching or anything, calm as a cucumber. This goes on for a minute or two. Then I suddenly realize the absurdity of what I'm doing and, out loud, I start laughing. I've flipped from greatly angry to greatly amused, and, since being amused is a more positive emotion, I thought it was okay to express it. The new girl heard me laughing and asked what was so funny. I said, I just proved psychic activity doesn't exist. I was screaming at you in my mind to hurry up and you didn't hear me. She didn't come back the next night. Story 22. I worked as a hostess at a restaurant for a while and I had an old guy ask me if I would go on a date with him. I said no, thank you, I have a boyfriend. He said, well, you can just dump him, right? I said no, I love him. He then says, I have money. Does that change your mind? I said no. He finally gave up and said your loss and left. Another one was, I work at Amazon and we had like a spirit week and one of the days was 70s day, so I got like a belly shirt with fluffy arms and some 70s bell-bottoms pants and did my hair all fancy. I was a little insecure, but I was excited and really wanted to go all out because I love Spirit Week. One of the supervisors told me to clean up a spill, to which he proceeded to watch me bend down to clean up. Once I cleaned up everything, he asked me what my husband thought of my outfit. I asked what he meant by that, and he started stuttering and acting all embarrassed. I wasn't sure what he meant, so I clarified by saying, if you're asking if my husband likes this outfit, that's a stupid question. Of course, he likes this outfit because he's a man with eyes. But I'm not sure if you mean if he's upset that I left the house like this, and if that is the case, what makes you think my husband dictates what I wear outside of the house? Other than that, I don't know what answer you were expecting from asking that question. I never wore those clothes again outside of the house, and he didn't talk to me for 3 months.